Vijaya, I'm muting myself. You can start with the presentation.
Okay. Hi, welcome to the session on Agile Mindset through a OD lens. So you must be wondering about what OD exactly means. So OD stands for Organization Development. As you see on the screen now, organization development has many definitions. So one of the definitions that I've shown here says that OD is a dynamic, values-based approach to systems change in organizations and communities. It strives to build capacity to achieve and sustain a new desired state that benefits the organization and its communities. If you see, I have highlighted certain words here which are dynamic and values based. So organization development is based on certain values such as collaboration, inclusivity, trust, honesty, and commitment. It is dynamic in the sense organization development works with systems which are ever changing, human systems which are ever changing, which are never stable or they don't stay at one point. And it also talks about systems change in the sense that OD does not target any one particular part of the organization, rather tries to take a holistic view and tries to work with the whole system in its totality. So the fundamental idea of OD is to build capacity for an organization so that it can achieve its desired results and that to be able to sustain those results. So that is the definition of OD. In more layman terms, what it means is that any organization has both tangible aspects as well as intangible aspects. See, for example, the tangible aspects of an organization or its profits, revenue, the products it makes, the services it sells, the employees they have, the skills and competencies which they need, the officers, the infrastructure they have. So all those are tangible aspects which you can measure, which you can predict, and you can improve on those aspects by measuring them and then correcting them and coming up with certain strategies and techniques to do that. At the same time, there are also intangible aspects of the organization. See, for example, the culture of the organization, the feelings and the different perceptions and the judgments which people bring into the organization, the interpersonal relationships, the conflicts, the power struggles. So all those are the intangible aspects of the organization. But needless to say, the intangible aspects have an effect on the tangible part of the organization. So the way we relate to each other, the culture of the organization, the values and the beliefs and the assumptions which people bring to the table. So all this affect the way the organization functions. So OD basically works on the intangible aspects of the organization. And it is based on management science, it's based on psychology, sociology, social psychology, and quite a lot of fields that work or understand people's behavior and systems behavior. Moreover, OD is also based quite a bit on research and theory. So what is an agile mindset? So it is variously described as the way we take failure. So how do we approach failure? It is also described as the ability to adapt to a changing environment, to be agile. It is also about mutual respect. It is about collaboration and continuous learning. So this is how an agile mindset is typically described by people and has been agreed upon. Now I have a question here. So is agile mindset something only specific to agile projects? So why this was not talked about, for example, in traditional waterfall projects. So mindset was never relevant in a traditional waterfall project. So what is your take on this? Let us see if we have the answers towards the end of this session. So now let's look at, so what is the work that we do regularly in our organization? What does it consist of? It consists of two things. One is the task, the second is the behavior. Task is the actual work that we do in terms of whatever it is. Either you are a trainer, or you are a programmer, or a project manager, or a business analyst. It's the specific task that you have to do to achieve your goals as well as the organization goals. The second part is the behavior. So what kind of behavior you need to exhibit to be successful in the particular job. Now, task needs two things. It needs skills and it needs knowledge. Skills is how you exactly execute a task. For example, you may have to be skilled at a particular programming language, or you may have to be skilled at using some particular tools. So for doing a task, you also need knowledge. So both skills and knowledge are normally acquired by training, either classroom training or on-the-job training, or through books, or through listening to others. It also comes through experience. But for behavior, what do we need? So for successful task execution, you need skills and knowledge. But for getting the right behavior in your work, so what do you need to do? This is an iceberg. The outer portion of the iceberg, let us call it as the behavior. So because this is something that we normally see, we can easily see others' behavior. The way the person is talking or acting or behaving. So all that we can see quite clearly. Sometimes we are also able to see our own behavior as well. So this is the tip of the iceberg. So now what causes behavior? What are the reasons behind the way a person behaves in a certain way? So as you can see here, your feelings, the person's beliefs, values, needs, assumptions, and experiences are all the basis for a person's behavior. And I've also mentioned genes here because there is also certain things which we inherit because of our genes. So all this contribute to our behavior. But now the challenge here is that for most of us, almost all of us, we don't know what these things that lie under the water, because it's like fish living in water. Does fish know that it is living in water? It doesn't know. So similarly, for most of us, we don't know that we are operating from a set of values, beliefs, and assumptions. It's just under there, but we are not aware that because of these things that we are behaving in a certain way. So then the question is, so then how do we understand whatever lies below the water? So, but unless we understand what lies below the water, we will not be able to change it. So the question is, how do we understand this in order to change these things? To change behavior and mindset, we first of all have to change the way we learn and what we learn. So that is very important. So there are two types of learning. One is acquired learning and the second is adaptive learning. So what is acquired learning? Acquired learning is acquiring new knowledge and skills. As I said earlier, it is by undergoing training or by reading books, by talking to others, share their experience, and through our own experience. So whatever we gather is acquired learning. So now whatever the session that I'm doing right now and whatever you're gathering, knowledge that you're gathering through this is basically acquired learning. So this helps us in becoming more efficient in executing our tasks. So by acquired learning, you will get more and more better in executing the task. So now what is adaptive learning? So can there be a different kind of learning that will help you get a new mindset or understand your behavior and be able to change it? So that is adaptive learning. So this kind of learning will help you improve your self-awareness. So basically it will help you get in touch with those aspects which are below the water. What we saw in the iceberg picture, it will help you get in touch with your emotions, your values, the beliefs that you hold, the assumptions that you hold. So all those things that will help you in get in touch with them so that you are able to understand them better. So by doing so, you will be able to improve your self-awareness. So you will be able to practice more and more and get to understand more and more about your own values, beliefs, assumption, framework that exists within yourself. So because this is the fundamental reason why certain behavior is exhibited by a person. So unless this is understood, any change in behavior or mindset cannot happen. So adaptive learning helps you get in touch with the portion of the water which is below the iceberg. So we also call this a shift in worldview, which means a worldview is generally the way we look at the world, the way we give meaning to the world and whatever events are happening in the world. So it will help you to make a shift in the way you look at things, which actually automatically leads us to the fact that it will help you to deal with the increasing levels of complexity that we see around ourselves in today's world. So in today's environment, we know that we exist in a VUCA world, a world which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So this is the kind of world that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So how do we therefore change ourselves so that we are able to effectively deal with this world? And also how do we help others? So in a leader's role, we may have to help others as well in dealing with such an environment. So in that environment, acquired learning will not be of much help. So even though you read several books or attend training programs, so these training programs or the books that you read or the lectures that you listen to may not really help you in developing your own psychological maturity. It will not help you in getting a shift in the way that you look at and understand things. So adaptive learning is the only way where you can deal with the VUCA world. So as you can see here, so this is a different representation of what is acquired learning and adaptive learning. So acquired learning, we call it as horizontal development. It means more knowledge and skill, which means similar to the way a person can keep adding after his or her name as to a BE, ME, MBA, PMP, CSR. So that is more of a acquired learning. So you keep acquiring more and more knowledges and skills. But adaptive learning is what we call as a vertical development. So as against horizontal development, adaptive learning is vertical development, which doesn't come by adding degrees or certification, but it comes through a process of learning which increases your effectiveness in dealing with the world, which is much more complex than what we actually understand or perceive. To give another analogy, acquired learning is like you have the same old computer system or a laptop and you keep adding more applications in order to improve its capacity. So fundamentally, you have the same operating system and the same microchip, but you keep adding more applications to it, which will give you much more functionality. But adaptive learning is something like upgrading the system with a new operating system. So a new operating system automatically comes with much more capacity and power to do a lot more things, which is not possible with the older version of the operating system. So now with the new operating system, whole variety of new applications and capabilities are possible. So this is fundamentally the difference between acquired learning and adaptive learning. So the question is now, how do we do adaptive learning? How do we achieve adaptive learning? So a range of methods are available to do this. But at the same time, we also have to understand that we have to learn things differently. So in order to do that, I will share here a small technique called the learning loop. If you see here, we have certain strategies and techniques that we implement in our work or in our to get certain results. Either it could be the job that you do or the plan that you have come up with. So whatever it is, so there are certain strategies and techniques to achieve certain things that we want to do, and it yields certain results. Typically, we look at the results and then we check if this is what we wanted to achieve, and then we decide that we need to change this strategy in order to get the exact result. So this is a very typical loop that we do in our lives. Do a task, execute a strategy, look at what results it yields. Normally, it will not be the result that we wanted exactly. So measure those results and then come back and change the strategy that we have originally. So this is the loop. And then change the strategy and then execute it again, look at the result. So this is the typical problem solving loop that we normally have. This is called single loop learning. So for example, you might have a plan to achieve more customer satisfaction, for example. So you execute the plan, you check the results. If the results have not achieved the amount of customer satisfaction that you wanted, then you change the plan and then execute it again. So this is typically a single loop learning. But what we may not be in touch with here is, what are the assumptions or beliefs that are operating in the choices that we make for choosing certain strategies and techniques. So all human beings operate with certain assumptions, values, and belief systems. So this is basically what decides what we choose. So the important aspect here is to understand why we do what we do. So those generally I have termed it here as assumptions. This includes the entire framework of your values, beliefs, and assumptions. So we all operate under this framework and make choices out of that. So the crux here is if we have to get the results that we want, we need to be aware of this framework which is operating behind the strategies and techniques. So this is what we call as double loop learning. So which is questioning the underlying assumptions, values and beliefs behind what we do. So unless we are able to question these underlying assumptions, we will not be able to achieve the result. So we will remain in the single loop learning method, and without being aware of it, we will be choosing strategies and techniques which may not yield the results that we want, while the same set of assumptions is operating behind. So this is one important way to uh, do an adaptive learning. So now you might ask, how do we get in touch with these underlying assumptions, values, and beliefs? So this is something like fish living in water. So how can we? What can help us, get in touch or be aware of these assumptions which are operating behind the choices that we make? So there are certain specific tools and methods which are available for adaptive learning. A couple of them you might already be aware of. So one could be psychometric tools. There are a range of psychometric tools available, from very simple to very complex. So this is the kind of agile mindset change that we are talking about. So we need psychometric tools which are towards the complex end. It necessarily needs someone who's trained in those tools to help a person understand or get in touch with his values, beliefs framework which the person holds. So there are quite a few psychometric tools available, which typically organizations also use. In the agile environment itself, organizations use MBTI, they use risk profiling. So they also use strength finder. So these are a few tools which are typically used by organizations. They are good tools. Going forward, I will also share a particular tool which can be used effectively, especially in an agile environment. So coaching is also another thing with a lot of organizations using agile have started applying coaching, both individual as well as team coaching. So a good coach will be in a better position to help people understand the set of assumptions or the governing variables which exist behind people's choices. So a good coach will be able to ask powerful questions to the individual so that the individual is able to arrive at the answers by himself or herself. So the other tools that the methods that I have listed out here, the first two, the human process labs or the T groups and the group relations conference, these are events which are held publicly. These are not called training programs, but they are rather called as events or conferences, which some third-party organizations, non-profit organizations do. So these things don't normally or not done within organizations, and these are programs or events which go on for a week or 10 days. In a typically in a as a residential program. So these programs are quite powerful in their nature, and it helps individuals, one, to get the ability to reflect on themselves, reflect on their own values and belief systems, so that they are able to see the world or able to make a shift in their worldviews. And these things have typically happen in a group setting. These are not, these are facilitated by facilitators who are quite experienced in these areas, and they give you good feedback. And this typically happens not in a one-on-one setting, but in group settings, where a group of people come together and it is facilitated by two or more facilitators. So these are residential programs, and they're very intense programs, which offer you tremendous learning about the portion of the iceberg which lies under the water. The second one that I listed down here, which is group relations concept, is another powerful method to understand group dynamics. So it helps you understand one's own role within group and how the entire group works. So these two are very powerful and intense programs that give individuals very good insights about how they operate. So what are their the values belief framework that operates or governs their behavior. So the third one that I have listed down here is process consulting, which is quite a bit based on the previous two points I mentioned here, which are human process labs and group relations consulting. So process consulting basically is a form of consulting where the consultant or the facilitator holds a mirror to the group. This also happens in a group setting. Holds a mirror to the group to show the group that this is how the entire group is operating. So process consulting does not focus on the content of the group work. It doesn't focus on what the group is working on. It doesn't focus on the task or the processes, but rather how the group is functioning. So how are the interpersonal relationships being handled? So how is conflict, for example, being handled? So how is the trust factor working within the group? So how is authority and leadership working in this group? So how are decisions being made? How are problems being solved? How effective or ineffective is the communication within the group? So these are the processes which a process consultant will be able to help the group with and improve upon. So this is another powerful technique which can be used to significantly alter people's mindset. So through process consulting, when a trained consultant is able to show to people, in here and now, that this is how, the group is behaving. This is how the group is making decisions or communicating with each other, and these are the reasons behind why the group is not able to improve its performance, or these are the reasons why the group is failing. Then it becomes very effective in helping people change their perceptions and their beliefs and assumptions. See, while going through all this, we need to remember that the methods that I described above are not a one-time application of those methods. So it's not that once you do one psychometric tool, or once you go through this group relations conference or any of those events, that you come out as a completely changed human being. So, or you send one of your team members to any of these programs, or make them go through a psychometric tool, counseling, or a consulting process, that the person is going to come out of it entirely changed. All human beings are work in process. So this is actually a slow process which, given the right environment and on a sustainable basis, if organizations take up these efforts, then it will yield dramatic results. So fundamentally, human beings are work in progress. So we cannot change overnight. We cannot change ourselves overnight. So there is one caveat which we need to be aware of. So changing behavior and mindset is not just a function of the individual alone. So it's not that we subject a person through a coaching session or one of the group relations conference or the tea group. The person is going to change to the extent that we desire or we expect. because individual's behavior is a function of three things. First is the individual himself or herself. So the own individual personality, the tendencies, the temperament, and so many other things. So the individual himself brings to a situation. The second is the organization context or the organization environment. So for all human beings, once you become part of a certain organization, the individual's behavior changes according to the organization environment in which he or she operates. See, for
Vijay,
example,
there
if
is some,
as an
there is some,
individual,
Vijay, there is some disturbance coming
not
from your side. Yeah.
yeah. So there is some work going on outside.
Okay.
One
So I
second,
think
one
you
second.
can.
Yeah, one second. Sorry, one second. So yeah. So I was
Yeah, now
talking
it's
about
better.
the organization. Okay. Yeah. So I was talking about the organization context in which an individual works. So for example, if an individual joins an organization where the culture is really bad, so the individual doesn't have much freedom or choice, uh, freedom to make his or her own choices, then the individual, even though the individual, let's say, comes with very good skills and capabilities, and comes with a lot of potential for taking initiatives and a lot of potential for success, the organization context, if it has a culture where it doesn't allow individual freedom, then the person will not be able to thrive in such an environment. So the person's behavior in that environment changes. Sometimes the person might adjust himself or herself according to the environment. But the opposite is also true. If a person enters an organization context where it is very conducive for personal growth and development, so it gives a lot of freedom to the individual. It allows the individual to take risk. Then the person's ability to grow and develop, to contribute or to be successful in the organization context becomes much more. So the individual behavior is also dependent on the organization context. The third is the worldview of that era. So what I mean by that is over centuries or whatever period of time that human beings have existed. So we have belonged to eras where worldviews have changed. See, for example, the predominant worldview today is that the world that we exist is very complex. So we live in a VUCA world. We live in a world which is very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So we also live in a world where there is a lot of information, there's a lot of connectivity. So this is how we see the world. This is the predominant worldview that most of us hold, or at least it is, I would say, it is shifting to that kind of worldview. So at least 100 years back or 200 years back, this was not the worldview that we had. The predominant worldview in the beginning of the industrial era was that uh, we all work in a clockwork universe. So everything has been, planned and uh, programmed, and this is how it will work. And so there is not much of a free will which human beings have, and we all exist in a closed system. So that is the fundamental reason, why we ended up with a very traditional waterfall method of working. And the worldview also undergoes change. So now when we move from industrial era to the information era, worldview for many of us has been changing. So the individual's behavior also changes according to the worldview of that, the predominant worldview of that era. So today the worldviews that we're shifting into thinking that the world is much more complex and it is a much more connected world. So we are not living in closed system. So these are the things that affect the individual's behavior. So it is not sufficient that if you work only with the individual learning. So we also have to bring about a change in the agile mindset. We also need to look at the organization context and also understand what is the worldview that predominantly exists for that person. So I would like to introduce one psychometric tool here that I was talking about earlier, which is a very good fit for looking at agile mindset and understanding what it is and change it. So this tool is called Existential Universal Mapper. This tool is based on a framework which was developed by Dr. Clare Graves. He was an American psychologist. He posited something called levels of existential universes, similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He theorized 9 levels of existence in which people can exist. So people can exist in different existential universes based on their own individual personalities, the worldview that they belong to, and the context in which they exist. People can exist in any of these existential universes. So these existential universes also correspond to a set of values, needs, motives, and assumptions, which is very particular to that level. And he also said, Dr. Clare also said that human beings evolve psychologically, and they evolve according to the way we understand the world. So he basically said there is a hierarchical level of existence. This tool, while using all those existential universes, doesn't necessarily cater to the view that it is hierarchical, but rather says that these existential universes are configured in each individual uniquely. Therefore, an individual behaves in a certain way. So if you use this tool, it will give a very good understanding of a person's values, needs, wants, beliefs, assumptions, and motives. So this tool gives a very good insight on the behavior of a person based on the person's values, needs, beliefs, and assumptions. So at the team level, this tool can be administered individually to give feedback to the person about or have a conversation with the person about so what this person largely believes in. So what are the values this person brings to the table? So what does the person basically want? So this tool also will give insights, therefore, on what are the person's predominant decision-making tendencies, how the person is able to deal with change. So what kind of interpersonal relationship the person is tend to have. So at the team level, if we administer this tool to individuals, say a group of 10 people, so looking at the individual profiles of the people, this will help to bring to the table a conversation that help each individual to understand. So where am I standing vis-a-vis the other individuals in my team? So where are the conflicts or the differences happening? So is my need of something is it in conflict with the need of some other person in my team? So this team profiling will help resolve dissonances within the team, help the team understand each other, what they are trying to achieve individually as well as collectively. So once this team profile is done and the conversations are held, it gives a very good opportunity to reduce wastage of human energy within the group, and therefore it can improve the team's performance significantly. At the same time, this tool, a different version of the tool can also be used at the organization level, which will help us understand, so what is the culture of the organization. So just like for individuals, for organizations also there are different existential universes. So where does the organization belong? So in which existential universe does this organization belong? So therefore, what is the organization trying to achieve? What are the organization's fundamental values and beliefs? So where does the organization want to go? So therefore, this tool will help identify, so how do we engage employees more? How do we improve our decision making? How do we improve our communication processes? So these are some of the areas which this tool can help with. So that was my last slide. So if you have any further questions, you can reach me at this particular mail ID given here, vijaya@vify.in. Thank you.
Vijaya, Ajit here.
Yeah.
There is one question from audience. The question is, what is the starting point for OD? So when does an organization start or think of OD? This is by Vijay.
Yeah. Okay. So see, typically when the organizations, I'm taking a very typical example. Let us say in an IT organization, either projects are facing issues either productivity issues or quality issues, or there are conflicts, or there are issues in decision making where the team is not able to sit together and make decisions, or there are communication issues, or there could be simply, productivity issues or quality issues, the schedules are not being met. So there is always a people side to it. So you may bring in processes, you may bring in more checklists, more control to do all this, but you will always find there is a certain way that people's behavior can be changed. If you feel that people need to be brought in together so that the performance improves considerably, then OD's role starts from there in identifying what exactly is happening in this particular setup. So what are people predominantly talking about? So what are their main pain points? So is the communication not happening, or the trust doesn't exist, or there's a lot of conflict, or is there fear, or people really talking about the issues that have to be talked about, or there are certain undiscussable issues. So OD typically starts with a diagnosis of the problem, and then from there it proceeds to devise solutions. Does that answer? Hello, Ajit.
So thank you very much, Vijay. I don't think there are any further questions. We have 1 more minute to close. So if you have any questions, you could ask us now. Meanwhile, at the end of this webinar, you'll get a survey. We would request you to fill it up. It helps us to improve on our webinar. Thanks for attending, all of you. Vijaya's email ID is displayed on the screen. You have any questions or any business-related queries, you could feel free to write to Vijaya. Thank you very much for attending. I am closing the webinar now. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vijaya.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Ajit.